They're all set to report their third quarter numbers. So that covers any activity from July through September on October 15th is the deadline. This is a really important deadline because it's one of the last filings before election year, before election day, I should say. And, especially this year with so many different, Americans voting by mail, voting early, this is really some of the last financial activity you're going to see that really matters for the 2020 election, especially with so many candidates that are going to really struggle to spend money, in later October because so many people will have already voted. Most candidates will announce this week and next week early, before October 15th, how much money they've raised. But of course, they're mostly going to announce statistics that make their numbers look good. So a lot of people will say how much they raised, but they won't give you much more than that. They might say, that the candidate raised a certain amount of money from donations under $100 or sort of other cherry-picked stats like that. But these numbers are not that useful to reporters because they don't have any context. We can't compare them to what other campaigns' information is being released. So that's why the FEC is really important. On the 15th, communities have up until midnight to actually release all their filings. Now, you can look out for some of them putting out these filings early, October 13th or 14th, but that's somewhat rare. A lot of them wait up until 11 p.m. Or even right up until midnight to file this information. So I will go to this link here. A lot of this stuff will be posted on this page. If you go to the FEC's website, fec.gov, campaign finance data, filings and reports. But we don't really want to be sitting around on October 15th reloading this page. So I would really recommend that folks sign up with this service called FEC Notify to get the most important, I should move this here, to get the most important information. So basically this allows you to basically subscribe to different committees that you're tracking. And as soon as they file their Q3 numbers, the FEC will actually send you an email. So if you want to get this information first, I highly suggest signing up for FEC Notify. And also, if you know which candidates you're looking for, say if you're a reporter in South Carolina, you might be tracking the South Carolina Senate race. So you might be looking at Jamie Harrison, for example. So if you click on that, it'll show you Jamie Harrison's Senate campaign committee, and you can put notifications on or off. I should note that, I'm a campaign finance reporter, so I'm a total nerd on this, but I have 210 different committees that I'm tracking. But going back to Harrison here, see if we can find it here. So this will send you the email as soon as sort of Jamie Harrison's campaign files. For some committees, you might have to dig around a little bit to make sure you got the right one. They don't necessarily have straightforward names. For example, if you look up Lindsey Graham on here, it won't really give you much. Graham's is actually called Team Graham. So to make sure you have the right committee type, it'll say committee type House or Senate for House or Senate candidate campaigns. That's how you know you're tracking the right one. So let's have a look at an FEC profile. Right off the bat, you have a lot of data here. This is what us campaign finance people would call summary data. So basically it's giving you sort of general figures about how much the candidate has raised, spent, how much they have in the bank. It also provides some sources of funding. So one really important one to look at is un-itemized individual contributions. This is another word for small donors, donors giving $200 or less to the candidate. This is sort of an arbitrary mark the FEC has set, but it's a really important figure for campaigns. Campaigns are relying a lot on these small donors, just everyday folks like you and me donating to campaigns, and they're just a crucial source of money. So we can go in and actually look. One important thing is coverage dates. So this data, as you can see, is only up till the second quarter. It's only through June 30th, 2020. You'll know if it's updated because it will say through 9/30/2020 after Q3. So Harrison hasn't filed Q3 yet. So obviously, we won't get this until October 15th. On the day of the deadline, this won't actually be updated. So you'll actually have to look at the filing itself. So this will live under filings. If you sign up for FEC Notify, you'll also get the filing sent to you. And it should say October quarterly. So for example, we'll look at the Q2 data here. So once again, you have all these stats. You have the important things like cash on hand. That's how much money their campaign reported having in the bank through the end of the period, as well as total receipts, how much they've raised. You can see again here, un-itemized is how much they're getting from small donors. So if you, this percentage of this is how much they're raising from small donors. Another important one is PACs. How much are they getting from PAC money here? And then disbursements, how much they spent in the third quarter. And then along here, you have cycle to date. So this is how much they've raised through the reporting period for the entire cycle. So for all of the 2020 cycle. I think small donors are important. If a candidate is raising, like Harrison, over 50% from small donors, that's a big deal. That indicates sort of significant grassroots support. Whereas there's a number of candidates in sort of less competitive House and Senate races who maybe will get like 1% from small donors and most of their money from PACs. So that's sort of, that shows that they maybe don't have as much grassroots support. Now, this is, you can also look at, every single donation to Harrison as well, or to each candidate. But I would warn about doing that. If you actually try to look on this page and you go to all line numbers, it'll give you a massive number of donations because you're going to be looking at every single donation to this candidate. I wouldn't recommend that. Instead, I would go to the filing, click on this download button, and download it as a CSV. That way you can sort the biggest expenditures and the biggest donations without having to dig through a number of pages. One page that is useful if you want to look at like which PACs we're giving to a candidate, you can look at line number 11C. And I can go to Graham here for this one, I think. So say if you're looking at like specific PACs to this candidate, this would be able to show you. So you see like you have some PACs for well-known businesses, General Motors, Pfizer, things like that. And this will tell you how much they gave in the third quarter, as well as how much they've given total during the year. Let me know if anyone has any questions as I'm going along here. If there's a super PAC, like a major super PAC spending in your state, then this is where you can actually look for interesting stuff. Sorry about that. So for example, in Michigan, you have this Better Future Michigan Fund spending a ton of money in the Michigan Senate race. Of course, super PACs can raise and spend unlimited amounts of money. So this group will file a lot of its finances in the third quarter. Almost all the money it raised this year will have come in the third quarter. So for example, for groups like this that are really funded by a small number of like really wealthy donors, you can actually probably go into itemized receipts, all line numbers, and there won't be that many donations, right? We only have less than a dozen donations to this group because they're just giving so much. One donor here is giving $500,000 in just the second quarter. So yeah, I think that's good overview of FEC. Does anyone have any questions about FEC filings? So I think, you know, if you're reporting on deadline day, the FEC is really useful. If you want to get out a story right away about the October 15th Q3 filings, you really want to stick with the FEC. But I think Open Secrets, our website, can really be helpful as well. So our website will update those sort of summary data figures in the morning after the Q3 filings come in. So again, this is sort of basic stuff like how much candidates are raising and spending and how much cash they have on hand. So the morning after, you'll see Graham's numbers will be updated, and it'll say the last report was 9:30. That's how you know it's updated. And you know, I would say that this also applies to our election pages. So for instance, if you wanted to look at the South Carolina Senate race, which you can do under politician elections, congressional races. There you can also, it'll also show you how much they've raised and spent and things like that. Our data is actually a little bit more accurate than the FEC's because we filter out refunds that the candidates give to donors. So the fundraising figures are actually a little bit more accurate on our website than the FEC's, ironically enough. And another really helpful thing there, if you don't want to calculate the source of funds yourself, the morning after the deadline, this will have updated figures on, you know, what percentage of their money comes from small donors. You can see Graham gets a lot of money from small donors, and what percent from PACs, or if the candidate is putting their own money into the race. So this gives just a very simple breakdown of that summary data.
And getting back to the negative numbers, so I've noticed that on the filings. So is that if they donate too much in one quarter, then they get it back, or how does that work exactly?
Yes, there's contribution limits that state, you know, you can only give $2,800 to a candidate per election. So you can give for each primary and general election. So if you give too much, the campaigns will usually give you a refund, and that is put under the disbursements tab on the FEC. So what'll happen is on the FEC, you'll see a lot of contributions that are like way over the limit, and it'll look like the candidates are bringing in all this money from donors, like they'll be bringing in too much money. So what we do is we put those disbursements, those refunds, we subtract it from the fundraising. So you get a more accurate picture of exactly how much they're raising.
And couldn't they, because with PACs being unlimited, couldn't they just give it to the candidate's PAC in theory and they could get through it that way?
So like with super PACs, obviously, and this is another thing I could mention about this. So each of these race pages also have an outside spending tab. So like you're talking about, Anthony, like super PACs and hybrid PACs, things like that can accept unlimited amounts of money from donors. So, but they cannot donate directly to candidates. But what they can do is air ads sort of supporting or opposing candidates. run ads, literature, other things to sort of support or oppose them. Usually it's television ads or online ads. So each race will have a tab that shows like how much these groups are spending to support or oppose these candidates. So for example, Lindsey Graham has a super PAC called Security is Strength. We can open a tab and look at it here. It spent over $2 million attacking Jamie Harrison with negative ads. And its entire purpose is to support Lindsey Graham. It doesn't intervene in any other races. So yeah, if you want to support the candidate more than you already are, you've already hit that maximum donation. You can give to one of these super PACs, and a lot of times the candidates realize who's supporting them, and they definitely appreciate that support, even though super PACs are not supposed to work with the campaigns at all, officially. So, for example, I mean, if you want to look at Security and Strength for Lindsey Graham, this is another group that files on a quarterly basis. So we're going to get a good look at who is funding it in the third quarter. So you could put that on FEC Notify, and you'll be able to see right away when they file who is donating to it. So, you know, the day after these filings come out, Open Secrets will have sort of the basic summary data, right? Raising, spending, cash on hand, stuff like that. But about a week after it comes out, we will have downloaded and coded all of the data. And once we do that, we'll be able to give a lot more detailed information about the candidates. So for example, we'll be able to give you updated information about the industries backing these candidates. So what we do is we go through all the donations and we code them under various industries. That way you can see sort of which industries are backing which candidates. We do the same for, you can get more detailed information about top contributors as well. So this is not, these groups or companies themselves are not donating, but employees at these companies are donating. So you can see that, you know, employees and PACs of various companies have supported Lindsey Graham, for example. And after the Q3 filings come out, these numbers will jump up for a lot of these companies, and we'll get an updated look at those top companies. You can also look at, this is a really interesting one, I think, is geography. So you can see, you know, where are these candidates getting the most money from? You know, how much are they getting from the state, from inside the state or outside the state? If you're getting a lot from outside of the state or outside of the district, that indicates that you are in a very national race, you know, a race that's being watched by a lot of people. So Graham, for example, is getting a lot of money from out of state. Of course, South Carolina, not the biggest state. So that indicates that that is a very national race. People from far and wide across the nation are interested in it. So, I mean, this kind of data, I could also add one more is demographic data. You can see, you know, what percentage of donors are men and women. You know, so this is all really interesting information. And I think, you know, if you want to do sort of a deeper dive into a race, sort of a week or so after these filings come out, maybe like really investigating into these candidates' finances, then that's where Open Secrets can really come in handy with this data. And I should mention that all of these things I just mentioned that were on the Lindsey Graham page would also be on the South Carolina Senate page, the race page. So you can see here what the top industries are for all the candidates in the race, as well as things like geography, sort of in-state, out-of-state. And you'll see, you know, in a race like this, where you know, the candidates are really making it about which party will control the Senate. You're you're going to see not much money in state for either candidate. And you can also see sort of the top metro areas for the various candidates. You'll see, you'll usually see a lot of New York, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C. Amid those figures, as well as zip codes and things like that.
And obviously, so the last big deadline was September 30th. I mean, for someone that might be new to campaign finance, or they're pitching this to their manager, on October 15th. Is there like a big smoking gun or red flag that you look for when you're looking at this data?
Yeah, I mean, I think on deadline day, you really want to focus on small donors, PACs, sort of where are they getting their money from. And you also really want to look at, I think we're going to see a lot of record-breaking figures. Are they raising more? Are they raising less? How much do they have left in the bank? When, if you're able to dig into the filings a little bit more, I think it's always really interested to look at industries. What sort of industries are backing this candidate, and what implications does that have? So, some candidates receive a ton of backing from maybe oil and gas interests, or from unions, or from Wall Street, right? What kind of implications does that have, and what does that mean for them as a lawmaker? I also think a big one is we do a lot of reporting on gender as well. Which candidates are doing really well with women, who are an increasingly important demographic for political fundraising. Women are giving more in this election cycle than ever before. And then I think also geography, how much of your money is coming from in-state, out-of-state, or if you are a House candidate, how much is coming from inside the district or outside of the district. I think these are all really interesting things to look at. And I think as well, looking at, individual top donors is a big thing. And that's where with super PACs, you have some donors giving $1 million, $2 million donations to the group. That's noteworthy. That's a big deal. And I should note on that point, I talked about how outside spending is on these race pages. You can also look on our outside spending section, which is updated daily. So this is something where if new filings come in and we get fundraising for a super PAC that's spending in a race that you're covering, if you go to our outside spending page and look by group, you can see how much money that group is spending. So if you go to Lindsey Graham's group, you can see here, and it'll link to the profile. And that'll give you some context of how that stacks up to sort of other groups spending in this election cycle. And of course, looking at sort of the donors to the group. I would also note another useful tool if you're reporting on this stuff, if you're reporting on an election, is online ads. So this basically aggregates all the data from Google and Facebook ads for political candidates, which are by far the two top platforms that candidates use to advertise. So each of the race pages also has an online ad spending tab where you can see, it'll load here, how much they're spending. I think when you look at these figures, they look absolutely ridiculous, but you might not have context to how much money that really is. If you look on our online ads database, the full portal, which I should say you can access by going to menu, political ads, and then click on internet ads. That'll actually give you a list of all the top spenders. So you can actually contextualize it. And that way you can see Jamie Harrison's campaign is spending almost more money than almost anyone else in the world of politics on online ads. And so on this page or on this one, wherever you find it, you can click on it and get a sort of in-depth profile of their figures. So you can see how much they're spending on each platform. You can see how much they've spent over time. And you can also adjust this so that, Jamie Harrison didn't really get into the race until 2020. So you can say, let's look here and see, give it a better look. And you can see here that Harrison is now spent $2 million on Facebook in 1 week on online ads. And that's also here. And you can also look at where they're spending, where they're targeting. So, for online ads, they can be used for a couple different things. They can be used to try to turn out voters. They can be used to try to get people to donate to the campaign. They can be used to try to get people to request mail-in ballots, especially this cycle. I'm getting a lot of shoe advertisements that I've been looking for sneakers. So in Harrison's case here, you can tell that he's really using this platform to raise money because he's spending a lot of money in big states like California, Florida, all over the country to really try to target supporters, knowing that it's a national race and knowing that people want to beat Lindsey Graham. A lot of Democrats really want to unseat Lindsey Graham. So that's why he's raising so much money, is because he's putting out all of these online ads all across the country, and people are donating to his campaign via that method.
And going back to the Google spending, so I imagine that helps with, I would assume it would help with search engine optimization with Google if you're spending more money with them in theory, or?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, I can actually give an example. If I look up Jamie Harrison, right away, Jamie Harrison's donation page will come up. That's an advertisement from Google.
Got it. Okay.
So, and right there, they make it extremely easy to donate, right? So this is all very, very targeted, very much trying to make sure that Harrison's name shows up when people are looking for things. Even if you Googled less other things like South Carolina or more general things, Harrison's or Graham as well, their ads might show up on your Google search. And one more thing I also think is useful for election-related stories is our elections overview page. So after Q3 data comes in, the summary data, right, the initial, the basic spending, raising, and cash on hand, we will update this elections overview stats at a glance to show how much House and Senate candidates are raising. So these give you a good overview of among Democrats and Republicans in congressional races, who is raising more money? What are those general trends? Because that's relevant if you're comparing, say, a Democrat and Republican in a race. And you can cycle it. I would suggest looking at current candidates only. And when you look at that, you can see that the disparity is pretty large. That Democrats are generally raising more money than Republicans. Another thing that will update with new summary data after Q3, another really interesting page, is large versus small donations, right? So we talked about before how small donors are so important nowadays to try to get that influx of money from online, small donors giving little, but it adds up to a lot of money. So this will update Q3, a whole new batch of data to show who's getting the most from small donors. And we've seen generally with small donors that, candidates that are very sort of controversial or have a very strong following tend to do the best with small donors, right? So you can see here that, AOC, Bernie Sanders, Jim Jordan, Matt Gaetz, Ilhan Omar, Adam Schiff, these are the folks that are doing the best with small donors. And of course, you can cite this. You can sort this by looking at totals as well. So you can actually see that among like current Senate candidates, Lindsey Graham is getting the most money from small donors. So I'll be interested to see if he still has that total after Q3. I think that number will go up a lot. And then you know, that's sort of the summary data. So a little bit shortly after the deadline, the Q3 data comes in, we will have more advanced data that shows more interesting stuff, like, for example, in district and out of district. So these show up on all the election profiles, but you can also go to this page on election overview to get a sort of overview of like who is raising, you know, the most money or the least money from in their district, or in state, out of state. And we give a really good number here that shows you the median, so you know, like, what does it normally look like for House candidates? How much do they usually bring in? So if you sort by sort of the top raisers, you'll see it's interesting. And you can also go to all House candidates. So if you were looking for stories, potentially, maybe you didn't have one in mind, but you're interested in seeing like who is raising the most in their district or the least. You can see here that a lot of candidates, a lot of the best fundraisers don't bring in much money at all from their own district, because you just need, in order to raise that much money, you're going to need to go to you know, other sources outside of your district. And the same thing goes for in-state, out-of-state. And then a couple other pages I just want to highlight. If you just want to see sort of overarching trends in the 2020 election, is top industries. So you can see that if you see that, you know, retired is the top industry to the candidates you're looking at, well, there's a reason for that. That's because retired is the top industry overall. It's not really an industry per se, but it's a certain kind of code we have for folks that say that they're no longer, that they are retired, that they're not working anymore. And then you also see that, you know, securities and investment, Wall Street, real estate, finance are all among the top industries. So these things are important to look at because it gives you context that these are among the top industries. And you can look at past cycles to see how these trends have changed. We recently wrote a story about how education is giving more than ever, and that they are giving just an overwhelming majority to Democrats, more so than they have in past election cycles. And then one more thing I'd be interested in looking at here is another thing that will update after we code all the data. Again, this gives context for different stories, is men versus women. How much are they giving? You can see that this cycle, women are giving 43% of the donations, but by the amount of money they give, roughly 35%. And then if you compare that to 2016, the difference is extremely stark here. 2016, women only accounted for less than 30% of all money given. This is useful info if you're trying to contextualize, you know, the data when you're looking at men versus women contributions. And then one more page I'd just like to highlight here is the top donors. And you can see here that the top donors are giving a lot of money. Most of this is going to super PACs, hybrid PACs that can accept unlimited amounts of money, what we call outside money. So if you see there's a super PAC in a race that you're covering, and a major donor, you know, gave money to that PAC, you can look on this page and see where they stack up in terms of other donors. You know, how much money have they given over the length of the cycle? And these numbers will increase dramatically after we download the Q3 data.
And you mentioned, so education is one of the top categories. So if a journalist is interviewing like a professor at a university, would it make sense to run them through this database just to see, especially if it's a political topic, just to see who they're donating to, or if they're.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just interesting to see sort of the trends. Yeah, I mean, for example, for education, we actually have different profiles for all of them. So if you go to industries, like if you're writing a story about related to education and you think there's a hook with the election, I think this data is good to add. You can actually look at the profile here and see, what educational institutions are giving the most money, or these universities are not giving the money themselves, but employees at these universities. And you can see University of California, Harvard, Stanford, Columbia, just giving a ton of money to Democrats. And of course, you can compare previous cycles on here to see how's it stacking up. You can see here it's the industry is giving a lot more, and you can also see that it's been trending more toward Democrats in recent election cycles. So yeah, I think this info is like really interesting to look at if you're writing a story about a certain industry and you want to have a campaign finance angle. Our site's very useful for that kind of stuff. If you just need to cite some numbers. So yeah, I think that's all. Are there any questions about any of this stuff? So yeah, I mean, hopefully that was helpful, and hopefully we can share out this video around the deadline. I know reporters will
one question
look at wanting to look at Q3 data. So hopefully this will be helpful.
Yeah, we have one question in the chat. Are there similar resources for state level races?
Yes, that is a good question. So unfortunately, our website does not have that, but there is a website specifically for state level stuff called followthemoney.org, which is more focused on state elections. This stuff will not be on the FEC, so you'll really have to look here. If you don't use this, like if you're in a certain state, that state will probably have its own state elections commission that has a website with that data. But followthemoney.org, the National Institute on Money and Politics, has their own database that basically collects all of those state election commission figures and puts them all in one place, kind of like we collect, FEC, lobbying, outside spending, and put it all in one place. So I can't be too helpful about navigating this, but this is the site to go to for state level stuff.
Okay. Well, if there isn't any other questions, Carl, I appreciate the time. Yeah, so October 15th obviously is the big deadline. This is why we wanted to do it today, to give you all 2 weeks out to kind of play around, and if you have any questions, just let us know. We're going to be recording this, and then there's going to be, Carl's slides will be up there as well. So, it'll probably come in handy on October 14th, October 15th when you're scrambling for a story and you want that context, that depth that these numbers can give, especially as Open Secrets, they kind of break it down on their site as well. So, especially if the FEC site might be a little daunting, maybe you just need someone to put it in layman's terms as well. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I had, and yeah, we appreciate the time, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right, thanks y'all. Thanks, Anthony.
All right, thanks y'all.